Hello, loves. Have you ever had the experience of coming out of a relationship with a toxic or narcissistic person and you're just reeling from it, and you have a lot of people in your life that tell you to not be engaging in victim mentality or not have a victim mindset or not play the victim? If that's the case, this video is for you. In this video, I want to talk about what to do with that post-narcissistic abuse victim mentality. This is a balancing act. Yes, you were a victim. That's very important to understand. And it's actually one of the hardest things to come to terms with at the end of one of these relationships, especially when you're in it. But I mean, even after a couple years when you're out of it, unsorting your brain, your memories, untangling from the gaslighting and your own cognitive dissonance, the things that you didn't want to see that were happening because they were too painful. Our minds have a way of covering up or blanking out on painful experiences in order to keep us safe, and you might find those resurfacing over time as you continue to heal. What happens is that once you are in a safe enough place and your body and your nervous system can relax to a certain degree, your subconscious mind will divulge things that you have held back from yourself because it was just too much to process in the moment. One of the first and most important steps in healing from this kind of experience is to claim your experience as a victim. Oftentimes in abusive relationships, we have a hard time admitting that to ourselves. That has to do with the fact that often whenever we say, hey, like that hurts, or that doesn't feel good, I feel unsafe, we're punished for those kinds of expressions, and oftentimes, are told that we are being too sensitive, or that we are, if you're in a spiritual community, they'll be like, well, you're playing the victim. And so we get gaslit out of our own experience and we deny that part of ourselves. And that can cause a lot of shame anytime we do feel hurt by someone's behavior towards us. If we are experiencing abuse and we're not allowed to be hurt, we're not allowed to be scared or sad or angry or have any sort of emotional response to harmful behavior, we can block it out and actually go into a freeze or fawn response. Some of you may have had the experience where you're in an altercation with a narcissistic person and it just feels like this web above your head and you can't move. Because you know that like any way you step, there's a trap there and you're going to become further ensnared if you do say or do anything. It's a really terrifying place to be. And accepting and acknowledging the fact that you were victimized in this situation is a huge first step in reclaiming your clarity, your agency, and your power. If you don't claim your experience as a victim, a few things will happen. One of them is that you will continue to loop in confusion. There is a looping that can happen if you don't actually acknowledge where you are, and that can keep you stuck in a freeze response. This might also have your experience seeping out into your life. You might be over processing with friends, trying to find validation from them for your own experience. And this can wear out some of your friendships. It can be really hard on them. However, if you are able to see for yourself and acknowledge for yourself and validate yourself and what happened, that's going to ease up a lot of pressure on those relationships, because you won't be looking to everyone around you to tell you that what you experienced happened. And the sad truth is that most of them aren't going to be helpful in that arena anyway, because they highly likely never saw that side of that person. So oftentimes when you're trying to get your experience validated because you're not doing it for yourself with other people, it's going to backfire on you, because they might think that you're a little crazy, or they might have seen that side of this person, and their doubt might further cause you to doubt your own experience. And you've already gone through enough gaslighting and have been told straight up to doubt your own experience by the person who is psychologically abusing you. So trying to get that need met externally is going to be really hard. So claiming your own experience is crucial. Another thing that might happen if you don't claim this for yourself is that you might go back and forth inside and wonder if you actually deserve that kind of treatment. You might also remain stuck in that gaslighting fog that the narcissist put you under. And you might think that you are crazy. You might think that you are too sensitive. You might think that you are doing all the wrong things. And this can do a lot of damage to your self-concept, to your relationship with yourself, therefore your relationship with life and others. You might end up feeling like you are indeed defective and that there's something wrong with you. Stockholm Syndrome, look it up. It's a real thing. Like, people have a really hard time acknowledging the abuse that they are undergoing and end up having this fondness towards their abuser. After a while, it just breaks down your mental capacity and your grip on reality so much that your subconscious is trying to do everything it can to be safe. So you start fawning towards this person because you know that if you are to stand up for yourself or confront them with what's happening, that there will be punishment. So what happens is that you end up trying to survive and stay safe by agreeing with them. You actually become more agreeable and agree with their version of reality, that in fact you are not being abused, and quite often a narcissist will claim that you are abusing them. Another thing that might happen if you don't claim your own experience as a victim of abuse is that you might end up staying in a harmful relationship, or you might end up returning to them after you've had some time away. Either way, it's just going to further cause you more harm and dig you deeper into a dark place that you want to actually pull yourself out of as soon as possible. And if you don't end up getting really clear and being really real with yourself about what you experienced, you might end up attracting or being attracted to another narcissistic relationship and playing that all over again. Being really honest with yourself and really real about what happened and claiming your experience as a victim of abuse is going to help you avoid a lot of pitfalls that many victims do fall into because they don't feel safe, or it's just too painful or too scary to recognize what has been going on for them. It is really hard. It's a difficult thing to do in the first place, to admit to yourself that this kind of abuse has been happening to you. A big part of that is because the meaning making that we make out of it, like, what does that mean about my judge of character? Or like, does that mean that I will end up in these situations again? Can I trust myself? Can I trust other people at all? Like, if this were true, if I was an actual victim, it's a very disempowering position to be in. It's a very disempowering thing to have to admit to oneself. It's extremely uncomfortable and it has one feeling pretty unsafe. So that is the first threshold that you have to get over and understand is going to come up when you really do need to claim that for yourself. However, on the other side of that, it's extremely empowering, and claiming your victimhood is what's going to help you unravel the initial aspects of this abuse so you can move forward and at some point actually get out of that victim state. But it's so important that you do claim that for yourself as a first step. And again, this is so hard in a community full of, people who are working on consciousness and mindfulness, because it's true, we don't want to live in a victim mentality. It causes a lot of harm. oftentimes narcissistic people who are abusing you are in a victim mentality themselves, right? They always turn themselves into the victim even when they're abusing you. So there is a natural fear and a natural repulsion to experiencing the role of a victim. It's a really painful thing. People get really uncomfortable around it. We get really uncomfortable around it. But if you don't claim that experience as your own, then you'll end up getting stuck in it and you'll further psychologically and emotionally and even physically damage yourself. So, the positive things that happen after you have claimed your victim experiences is at that point you are more likely to seek help and support that'll help you get the healing and the recovery that you need. You are more likely to do research on narcissistic abuse, relationship psychology, even, your own codependence and your own childhood wounds that might have left you susceptible to this kind of experience. And this is incredibly empowering. Like, once you're honest with yourself of what happened, like, you don't want to go through that again. And you have an awakening, shall we say. It is an initiation where you can't unsee that. You cannot unexperience it. And there tends to be this fire lit under people who come out of the fog and they want to understand what happened to them. They want to understand how to heal and how to never experience that again. The most powerful thing that will happen when you claim your victimhood is that you will actually gain clarity. Now, clarity is one thing that you lose in a narcissistic relationship. Like, oftentimes, pretty much all the time, abuse is followed by gaslighting. So when you're in these relationships, especially for years on end, everything just becomes a haze. I was going to say maze, but that's true as well. Like a mazy haze of complete confusion, and you don't even know what you're looking at anymore, because you're like, I'm feeling rather abused over here, and this person's like, no, you're not, you're just batshit crazy. So over time, that happening, you're turned completely inside out, and you have to dig yourself out of that. And by saying like, no, actually, that was abuse, and yeah, I got to take care of myself now and recover from that. It's like the fog just breaks away. It actually breaks the spell that you've been under, and you really need that. Doing this will also have you reclaiming your power, your self-worth, your own agency, your rightful anger as well, because you did not deserve that treatment. This will also help you become aware of any parts of yourself that might have felt like they deserve that kind of treatment. Doing this will also help you to walk away, to disengage from any relationship like this that's been super harmful to you, and will also keep you from engaging in toxic relationships down the road. You'll become all the wiser for it. But once we claim what we have experienced and that we were a victim for abuse, it allows us to love ourselves. That victimized part of ourself needs our love and attention. During narcissistic relationships, we spend so much of our time and energy focused on them, right? It's like, okay, well, if I feel this way, how are they going to react? If I express my feelings, how are they going to react? Are they going to punish me? If I express a need in this moment, how are they going to respond to that? Will they hear it? Will I get in trouble for that? Like, there's so much energy that gets spent on worrying and ruminating about how this other person is going to respond to just our being and our existence. So when we understand that we've been a victim of abuse, our energy gets to turn back inwards on ourselves, and we get to really be with ourselves. And this is a moment to deeply hold and love yourself. And all of that compassion and all of that care and all of that effort that you've been putting out to make sure your narcissistic person is happy and okay, um, this is a time to bring that in towards yourself, because you're the one that needs that. That little beat up part of you inside of yourself needs all of that love and compassion right now. Now, obviously, we don't want to get stuck in victim mentality because that can cause a whole slew of problems. We don't want to walk around feeling disempowered forever. So once we have done the work to understand what we have gone through and to gain clarity and agency around what has happened and who we are and where we stand in the dynamic, at that point, it's really important to do things that are empowering and that will have you come out of that victimized state. The first thing we want to do is to focus on recovery. I highly recommend working with a professional, someone who specializes in narcissistic abuse recovery. Do a lot of study. Dr. Ramani, I highly recommend her work. She has multiple books on this. The most recent one, called It's Not You, is incredible. I just listened to it years after my experience, and it helped to unravel things that my consciousness was still stuck on and confused about. So do your research and get help. This will completely unfuck your mind and your soul. The second thing you can do is to focus on yourself, your self-care. Focus on your dreams, your goals, your hobbies. Reintroduce yourself to all of those things that you lost in that relationship. It's highly likely you were shamed or put down or somehow diminished for the things that you like. So this is a really good time to gather those parts of yourself back up and to rediscover what you love and what truly brings you joy. It's also very important to get back into your body. We dissociate a lot in these relationships because it's just very uncomfortable and it's not safe to inhabit our own skin. We have to often lie to ourselves about how we are feeling in a situation, because if our honest feelings were to come forward, it could incite a problem or a fight with the other person. So you'll notice that there's probably a lot of dissociation that's happened. So getting back into your body and feeling how you're feeling just your physical sensations. You might have to do a lot of practice on this. I definitely did. I found that somatic therapies are incredibly helpful to get you grounded back into your own skin, into your own reality, and into your own feelings after these kinds of situations. Meditation is also very helpful. Just sitting there and watching and witnessing yourself think and unravel. It can feel like a lot of chaos. It's probably, well, I remember it being really painful and uncomfortable and confusing and like a full-on madhouse circus in there for a while. But after a while, it starts to become very peaceful and it starts to feel very good to be inside of yourself. Just take your time on it, but I do highly recommend some sort of mindfulness practice, just being with yourself in stillness to get to know yourself, reacquainting yourself with where you are in space-time and how you feel, where you exist, is going to have a tremendous effect on your healing and your ability to move forward in your life. And as I said earlier, it's a great time to learn about narcissism. It's also a very good time to learn about codependency. Looking into relational psychology, into your own childhood wounds. Why did you find yourself attracted to this person in the first place? Oftentimes we do have codependent wounds, like a need for a certain kind of validation that gets met during the love bombing phase. If you have certain insecurities or needs that you're only able to get met externally, or you don't feel that great about yourself, then the love bombing from a narcissist is going to feel really good. It's going to fill you up and make you feel like you've never felt before, like you'll never feel so seen or understood. And, it feels great in the beginning, but that's not actually real. However, if you are able to do that for yourself, if you are in a strong enough space to know your worth and your value, and you see how powerful and how beautiful and how strong you are, then that love bombing isn't going to have the same effect. It's not going to hypnotize you and rope you in. You'll actually probably be able to feel the insincerity inherent in it. And, it just won't captivate you like it did when you were feeling probably a little insecure. Maybe you got into that relationship when you were heartbroken from the last one. That's also why it's a really good reason to stay single for a little bit and to heal yourself before you go back into another relationship. It's a great time to look at your childhood wounding. If you had some sort of harmful dynamic as a child that left you feeling abandoned, unworthy of love, that kind of created those codependent complexes. If you feel like you have to earn love, if you feel like you have to save somebody, that can create a mentality, like a subconscious belief that you're not actually capable of experiencing or worthy of, healthy love. And when we have those subconscious beliefs, it's so much easier for us to engage in toxic relationships that are hurtful and to stay in them longer, because we actually think that, that's all that's out there and it feels familiar to us. And, we're attracted to, we feel more comfortable with what's familiar, even if it's not really actually good for us or safe. This is also a great time to practice self-development and growth so that you can show up better for yourself and better in other relationships as well. And finally, a huge empowering thing to do is to learn about boundaries. Doing all of that previous work about codependency and stuff is going to help you understand like why boundaries might feel hard to set. Like you might have been punished for setting boundaries as a kid, or your boundaries might have been crossed and maybe you just weren't modeled good boundaries. A lot of people aren't. Most people are not modeled healthy boundaries, and they can be very confusing as adults. Sometimes we think that, oh, if someone's setting a boundary, then they're punishing us or rejecting us, and that's not the case. Like, I think a lot of us have this sensitivity and confusion and misunderstanding about what healthy boundaries are. It's beautiful that it is, commonly talked about nowadays. But doing work on this particular aspect of life and self-development is going to really empower you moving forward, because if you're able to, first of all, know what your boundaries are, know what you're willing to tolerate and what you won't tolerate, and how, you will remove yourself from a situation if a certain kind of behavior starts to happen. That's going to eliminate a lot of problems and a lot of toxic relationships out of your life. Narcissists do not handle boundaries very well at all. So if you know how to do these properly, you'll be able to weed out advantageous people pretty quickly. And it is the ultimate self-love practice when you know what's harmful to you and you're willing to say no to people and situations who are going to harm you. Like, you develop this deep sense of self-trust, and that keeps you out of a victim situation in the future. And actually, well, obviously it will remove you from that victim mindset, because you are so much more empowered. You have agency over yourself. You get to say yes to situations and people that are good for you, and you get to say no to things that are bad for you. And when you are empowered that way, it's very hard to feel like or to become a victim. Now, this is not linear. It's not like you claim your victim story and then you get over it right away, right? There's oscillation. One of the beautiful things about the aftermath of these experiences is that we tend to learn to understand and hold paradox in our awareness, which is, closer to the truth anyway. Nothing's ever really black or white. So we we kind of, it sounds corny, but expand our consciousness to be able to hold multiple truths at the same time with awareness, and they don't like, we don't feel that schizophrenic split like a lot of people do when there are opposing truths playing out at the same time. So even after you've had a lot of healing and empowering experiences, there might be things, or there will be things that come up in situations that might trigger your trauma response. Maybe someone will say something and you'll notice yourself freeze up, or you'll fawn in a moment and you'll get kind of pissed off about that and about your behavior, or maybe you'll just feel more isolated and less trusting, or maybe you hear a song come on, or a situation reminds you of that relationship or a certain moment that was really scary that happened, and that can flood your system. You can become angry all over again. You can realize parts of yourself that were messed up and a little bit broken in that situation that maybe you haven't confronted yet. Like I said earlier, once we find ourselves in a safe place, these things do slowly start to purge out of our system. We don't get this information all at once. If we did, it would be way too overwhelming, and our nervous systems know that. So it will only bring out things or memories as you can handle them. So when you get that little drip of something from the past that was very triggering or challenging to look at, it can, re-trigger your whole thing, and you have to accept all over again, like, wow, yeah, okay, that was very abusive and very scary, and I was a victim in that state, and you like hold yourself and love yourself, and then you go back into your empowering phase, you go back into working on your self-concept and into your growth, and then the next thing might pop open. It's like all over again. It's like, yep, that happened and that was not okay, that was really hurtful, like that was very disempowering and degrading, and I did not deserve that. Like that was abuse. And then you have to, come out of that all over again. It's a dance, it's like few steps forward and then a step back and then forward and then back. So don't expect it to be like, oh, you deal with this part and then you become empowered and that's just done. It's like, no, it comes in layers. It's very much like an onion. There might be a tendency or a desire to ignore your experience when these things do come up, especially if you've come from a place where you feel so healed and you feel so good and you feel so empowered, and then you get hit with this memory or something that triggers the memory, and then the last thing you want to do is like go back into that feeling of feeling like a victim. But don't ignore it. It'll pass. It's a part of you that needs to be seen and acknowledged and held and loved and given compassion and given a moment to speak and speak its truth to you. And it's so important to hold and just sit with and be with the parts of yourself that feel angry and bitter and resentful or rageful, or the parts of yourself that you find are still stuck in freeze or fawn response, or that might want to still crawl out of your skin or just like, leave into another dimension. Like that's common and normal to have come up for quite a while after you separate yourself from these experiences. So just please be gracious and patient and gentle with yourself as these things move through. Your own inner validation is everything in healing from abusive relationships. Not acknowledging or deflecting your own experience will cause you to be really leaky in your energy. It'll cause a lot of instability, and can even create some manic or like schizophrenic behaviors. Maybe find yourself being a little bit aggressive or depressed, and you just cannot find your center if you do not validate yourself. Like you will wear your friends and your loved ones out. So be your best friend here. It's a great time to go in and reparent. Like your inner child is freaking out, and for good reason. And the thing is that nobody else can hold that part of you except for yourself. You have to learn how to hold that part of yourself first. And other people can hold you as you hold yourself, but you cannot expect other people to hold that like screaming, terrified inner child. Like that is the root of codependency. You can't expect others to completely hold you in your instability like that. People just don't have that kind of capacity. It does feel hard at first, but once you learn to reparent yourself, you redevelop that self trust that you lost in the narcissistic relationship. You become whole again. And this is the work that actually helps us heal our childhood wounds and has us available for healthy relationships with others down the road, and also has us completely uninterested in engaging in unhealthy dynamics in the future as well. And as I've said in other videos, it's so important to work on your self-concept and your subconscious beliefs about yourself, about the world, about what you deserve, what you're worthy and capable of in relationships. When you do this, you will find yourself less tolerant of people who will abuse you, and then you won't find yourself being a victim. You'll find your own power doing these things, and you'll realize that that power has been inside of you all along. I hope you found this helpful. Go easy on yourself. Give yourself all the love and the time that you need. And yeah, I'll see you in the next one.